Well, first of all, Darren, revelations that a 26-year-old Lebanese man is suspected by the United States Justice Department of piloting a jetliner which may have been sent to target the White House has shocked and disturbed his family here in Lebanon's eastern Bekaa Valley. Now, the man at the center of this is Ziad Jarrah, and he is alleged to be one of the hijackers on United Flight 93, which crashed in a field some 80 miles from Pittsburgh shortly after 3 other jets struck the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Ziad Jarrah's family here in Lebanon say that his profile, as far as they know, does not fit that of an Islamic fundamentalist bent on terror. In fact, his family here say that Ziad Jarrah enjoyed going to nightclubs, drank alcohol and shared his life, but was not married to a Turkish woman.
He never acted or talked in a way that you could have an understanding that he might be related to this. He has his girlfriend, he goes to nightclubs, he drinks sometimes. His way of life can't be related to these parts.
Now, Ziad Jarrah's life away from Beirut began in Germany 4 years ago when he began engineering studies by proud parents who actually paid for that training, those courses out there. Jarrah also went to the Hamburg Mechanical Technical Institute, where 2 other suspected hijackers were also studying its thought at the same time. Around a year ago, Jarrah told his parents that he was in the United States taking part in a seminar organized by the Boeing Aircraft Corporation that was related, he said, to his studies. After that, Jarrah returned to Hamburg, receiving yet more help from his parents. Later, he told them that he was going to Florida, was in Florida, training to be a pilot. They assumed all was well. Jarrah's last call home here in Lebanon came just 2 days before the suicide attacks, when he thanked his ailing father for sending him yet more money. The only time that Jarrah's movements raised concern here in Lebanon was when his Turkish girlfriend told his family that she thought he may have gone to Afghanistan with friends when they had separated for several weeks. Now, that is not being confirmed by the family. They say they have no evidence that he went to Afghanistan, and the family here in Lebanon is saying that they are more than willing to cooperate with the international inquiry. Back to you, Darren.
Brent, one question for you here. If, in fact, the family doesn't believe or is in shock and denial over what their son is accused of doing, what, in fact, did they think he was doing? Just that he was a student at all these places they were paying for him to attend?
Well, you have to look at the background of the family here. They're very well-to-do, well-educated, obviously have finances. They're a well-known family in the Bekaa Valley area, Sunni family, and they were convinced, they tell me, that their relative, that Ziad Jarrah, was doing very well in life. They had nothing, they say, to confirm any suspicions that are being raised now. In fact, he was back here in February to attend surgical work for his father, who had some heart surgery. He was here in February, and his girlfriend, the Turkish woman I mentioned, was back here only in August, just a few weeks ago, attending a family wedding, which Jarrah said he was unable to attend, saying that he was too busy taking examinations. Darren.
Brent Sadler in Beirut. Brent, thank you very much.
Ziad Samir Jarrah was born in Beirut, Lebanon, to secular parents, wealthy mother and father, and a large background, many aunts, uncles, and cousins. He grew up around rich, poor, Christian, Jew, Muslim, and he offered very little interest in religious matters. He wanted to grow up to be a pilot, but his father disavowed such an idea for fear that he would lose his son. The father would lose his son to an accident. Considering that pilots often make mistakes, in which his son often did as a child. We won't start with his birthplace, the anomalies regarding Ziad Jarrah, and there are many, start after he had left his home country to go to Germany. These are where the anomalies start. And we will start by March of 1995. A man named Ziad Jarrah rents an apartment in Brooklyn, New York. The landlords later identify his photograph as being that of the 9/11 hijacker. A Brooklyn apartment lease bears Ziad Jarrah's name. The Los Angeles Times would later report, quote, another man named Hassan Jarrah lived with Ziad, drove a livery cab, and paid the $800 monthly rent. The men were quiet, well-mannered, said hello and goodbye. Ziad Jarrah carried a camera and told his landlords that he was a photographer. He would disappear for a few days on occasion, then reappear. Sometimes a woman who appeared to be a prostitute arrived with one of the men. Me and my brother used to crack jokes that they were terrorists, said Jason Matos, a construction worker who lived in the basement there and whose mother owned the house. However, another Ziad Jarrah is still in the home country of Lebanon at the time. He is studying in a Catholic school in Beirut and is in frequent contact with the rest of the family. His parents drive him home to be with the family nearly every weekend, and they are in frequent contact by telephone as well. Not until April of 1996 does this Ziad Jarrah leave Lebanon for the first time to study in Germany. His family later believed that the New York lease proves that there were two Ziad Jarrahs. Evidence seems to indicate Jarrah is also in two places at the same time from November of 2000 to January of 2001. In the later months of 1996, within a few months of arriving in Germany, Ziad Jarrah begins to associate with a man named Abdul Rahman al-Makari, a local hardline Muslim who raises money for the militant Palestinian group Hamas and is monitored by the German intelligence service BFV. The German newspaper Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung will say that al-Makari, also known as Abu Muhammad, is known to the German security service BFV as a Hamas activist and instigator, and that it is therefore difficult to imagine that the 26-year-old Lebanese Jarrah was not registered by the machinery of the intelligence services. Jarrah later travels around Germany with al-Makari and meets with other radicals. Al-Makari runs the local mosque and makes money by selling special Arab foods he purchases in Hamburg while there. In the months leading up to 1997, while traveling with Abdul Rahman al-Makari, Jarrah had meets with another suspicious Islamic radical. The man, a convert, is known in public accounts only known as Marcel K. He is the vice president of the Islamic Center in the North Rhine-Westphalia. In March of 2001, the Bundeskriminalamt, Federal Criminal Service, will begin investigating the center's president with respect to membership in a terrorist organization. Marcel K. is apparently a close confidant of Jarrah because Jarrah always calls him before taking important decisions. For example, when he leaves to train in Afghanistan and when he applies for admission to U.S. flight schools, he will call Marcel K. during his pilot training and for the last time shortly before 9/11. Marcel K. will be arrested in Europe in February of 2003. It is not known what happens to him after this. April 1st, 1999. Ziad Jarrah has an unofficial wedding with his girlfriend, Azel Senguin. On or shortly before April 1st of 99, they have a wedding ceremony at the radical Al-Quds Mosque, but they do not register the wedding with the German government. So it is not legally binding. Al-Quds is run by Mohammed Fazizi, a known Islamic militant who hates Israel and the United States. It is the most radical mosque in Germany. A photo, apparently taken by Jarrah at the wedding, will be found by German intelligence in Senguin's home several days after 9/11. The photo will be studied to determine who was a member or of close to the al-Qaeda Hamburg cell in early of 99. German investigators were able to identify 18 out of 22 men in the photo. In the photo included Muhammad Atta, Abdelghani Mazoudi, Munir al-Montasek, Ramzi bin al-Shib, Abdul Razak Labid, and Mohammed Raji. The LFV, the security service for the Hamburg region, will show such a surprising amount of knowledge of the people in the photo just days before 9/11 that it will later be suggested that the LFV had an informant. They did. The informant had been in the Hamburg cell for quite some time. The informant was known as Islam AG. Other intelligence services in Germany suggested that the LFV noted and indicated that if the LFV did not have an informant involved with the Al-Quds Mosque since 1999, at the very least, it had a great deal of knowledge about the Al-Qaeda Hamburg cell members. But this information was never shared. The notes given by the informant not only shows that the LB knew that the picture was taken inside Al-Quds, but it knows the picture was taken in early of 99 because the carpet shown in the picture was changed shortly after that time. Furthermore, the LFV photo notes show knowledge of even seemingly trivial details about some of the people in the picture. December 1999, Muhammad Atta, Ziad Jarrah, Marwan al-Shehi, Ramzi bin al-Shib, and Nawaf al-Hazmi meet to discuss the 9/11 operation at a building known as the House of al-Ghamdi in Kandahar, Afghanistan, according to a statement made by Ramzi bin al-Shib in an interview prior to his capture in 2002. Bin al-Shib will later say in this interview with Yosri Fuda of Al Jazeera, quote, "We had a meeting attended by all four pilots, including Nawaf al-Hazmi, Atta's right-hand man," end quote. The Guardian will interpret to mean al-Hazmi was not Hani Anjur as well later in the report. However, the 9/11 Commission, based on information obtained from Khalid Sheikh Mohammed under interrogation, take this with a grain of salt, will place Hanjur in Afghanistan in spring of 2000, indicating he will arrive some months after this meeting is held and could not therefore attend it. January 18, 2000, Muhammad Atta and Ziad Jarrah are filmed together recording their martyrdom wills in Afghanistan. The video footage will later be captured by U.S. forces in late 2001 and leaked to the media in late 2006. The footage is significant because it is the only hard evidence that Atta and Jarrah were ever in the same place at the same time. Although the two men were frequently in close proximity to each other, for instance, both attended flight schools in Florida just a couple of miles apart at around the same time, their paths often just miss each other. However, they appear friendly to each other in this footage, frequently laughing and smiling. Atta reads as well and the Jarrah reads it, but their exact words are unknown since the sound was not recorded and lip-syncing experts apparently failed to understand what they said. In a later video will meant for Ziad Jarrah, he could not hold his composure as he is seen laughing, nervously fiddling with notes, and being admonished by an al-Qaeda operative behind the camera. Strange personality shown by a man supposedly making a final will of himself. January 30th, 2000, Ziad Jarrah is again briefly detained and questioned at the Dubai airport. And some reports will suggest that this is because he is already on a U.S. watch list. It is not known when he may have been put on a watch list or even why. The only information about this will come from conflicting accounts as to why Jarrah is stopped and questioned by immigration officials for several hours in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, on January 30th. According to one version, UAE officials claim Jarrah is stopped based on a tip-off from the United States. A UAE source will tell author Jane Corbin it was at the request of the Americans, and it was specifically because of Jarrah's links with Islamic extremists, his contacts with terrorist organizations, that was the extent of what we were told. In 2002, CNN will also report that Jarrah is stopped because he is on a U.S. watch list. It claims that this is sourced not only from UAE sources, but from other governments in the Middle East and Europe. However, U.S. officials will claim no such tip-off was ever given. Other versions of the story will claim that Jarrah first raises suspicion because of an overlay of the Quran in his passport and because he is carrying religious tapes and books. This is what the 9/11 Commission will also later claim. Other accounts, such as the one in Vanity Fair in late 2004, will also support this version. There may be a middle version of sorts, that Jarrah may be stopped because the CIA wants people with a profile just like his to be stopped. According to CNN, the questioning of Jarrah in Dubai fits the pattern of a CIA operation described to CNN by the United Arab Emirates and European sources. Those sources say that in 1999, the CIA began an operation to track suspected al-Qaeda operatives as they transited here. One of those sources provided a drawing showing the airport layout and describes how people wanted for questioning were intercepted, most often at a transit desk. As was the case with Ziad Jarrah, CNN sources say UAE officials were often told in advance by American officials who was coming in and whom they wanted questioned. It will also be reported that in the summer of 1999, the CIA asked immigration officials all over the region to question anyone who might be returning from training camps in Afghanistan, and Jarrah fits that profile. The next day, on January 31st, the CIA and the United Arab Emirates officials apparently failed to warn German intelligence about Ziad Jarrah passing through security. Even though Jarrah's flight from Dubai was tracked to Hamburg, apparently neither U.S. nor UAE officials warned German intelligence about Jarrah. During Jarrah's brief detention, he confessed that he had just come from Pakistan and Afghanistan, and he had a large number of jihadist propaganda videos in his luggage, leading UAE officials to strongly suspect he had just been to a militant training camp in Afghanistan. But why did Jarrah admit that he came from two countries known to be under the microscope of the intelligence services and airline security services? And why would he carry jihadist propaganda videos in his luggage? An unnamed top German intelligence official will later say, if we had been given the information that Jarrah had been to Afghanistan and was planning to go to flight school, we might have asked the Americans whether they thought this was normal. If they had asked us, who is this guy? Who is learning to fly? Then perhaps there might have been a different outcome. He will suggest German intelligence might have started monitoring Jarrah and thus discovered the 9/11 plot. However, this official will complain, but it was one-way traffic with the CIA. You gave information and you got no response. The CIA will later deny that it had any knowledge of Jarrah before 9/11, according to a Vanity Fair article in 2004. Note that a UAE official claims that the CIA said it would secretly track Jarrah from Dubai airport, If this is true, it could explain why the UAE nor CIA told Germany about Jarrah. June 27th, 2000. Ziad Jarrah, an alleged pilot of United Airlines Flight 93, had arrived to the United States from Munich, flying from Munich to Atlanta, Georgia. He enters on a tourist visa issued in Berlin on May 25th of 2000. He then flies to Venice, Florida, where he has already arranged to take full-time lessons at the Florida Flight Training Center. However, he never files an application to change his status from tourist to student. According to the 9/11 Commission, this failure to maintain a legal immigration status provided a solid legal basis to deny him entry on each of the 6 subsequent occasions in which he re-entered the United States. But because there was no student tracking system in place, and because neither Jarrah nor the school complied with the law's notification requirements, immigration inspectors could not know he was out of status. Jarrah begins the private pilot program at FFTC on June 28th, aiming to get a multi-engine license. His training will cost him $16,000, which his parents wire to him. The Florida Flight Training Center, FFTC, is just down the road from Huffman Aviation, a flight school where Mohammed Atta and Marwan al-Shehi soon begin training. Having arrived in Venice, Florida in early July of 2000, Marwan al-Shehi and Mohammed Atta rent a room in the South Venice home of Charles Voss, a bookkeeper at Huffman Aviation. They arrive in a rental car, but later in the week buy a red 1989 Pontiac, which they registered to the Voss's address. They are found to be unpleasant and messy guests, and after a week, they are asked to leave. November 24th, 2000. Ziad Jarrah and a couple of companions from flying school rent a plane for a trip from Miami to Nassau, Bahamas. There is no immigration departure record, although there is a record of his re-entry. Upon his return to the U.S., Jarrah undergoes immigration and customs checks, including an inspection of the plane by customs for the presence of drugs, contraband, and currency. He will later tell his girlfriend that the pilot gets drunk in Nassau and he has to fly back himself, although he does not have a license for the plane. Jarrah should not be readmitted to the U.S. because he is out of status, and he had breached immigration rules by taking a flight training course despite entering the U.S. as a tourist, but this is apparently not noticed. On February 25th, 2001, Ziad Jarrah arrives in the U.S. for the 5th time and is admitted at Newark as a business visitor, receiving a 6-month stay. This is unusual, as inspectors usually give business visitors 1 to 3 months, depending on the port of entry, and 6 months only when the visitor can document the purpose of the stay, which Jarrah apparently does not do. Jarrah actually should not be admitted at all because he is out of status, for he had breached immigration rules by taking a flight training course despite entering the U.S. as a tourist, but this is apparently not noticed. Again and again, Ziad Jarrah is given a pass, even though he has overstayed his visa 6 times. And throughout his stay inside the United States, throughout his living arrangements in Germany, Ziad Jarrah never once lives or meets with any of the 9/11 hijackers or hijacker pilots. At no point has Ziad Jarrah ever come into contact with any of the operatives until a week in advance prior to 9/11. While staying at the Days Inn Motor Inn in Newark, New Jersey, Ziad Jarrah rents a room for himself and for the 3 muscle hijackers of Flight 93, Saeed Al-Ghamdi, Ahmed Al-Nami, and Ahmed Al-Hasnawi. You would think being that he is a pilot hijacker, one of the main arteries of the largest terrorist operation known to the United States and beyond, the most important operation that one of the lead operatives would get to know the spokes in the wheel or his other adversaries involved with the plot. But there's a lot more to the background of Ziad Jarrah. A lot more. According to a New York Times article, headliner, Lebanese in shock over an arrest of an accused spy, written by Robert Worth, dated February 18th, 2009. For 25 years, Ali al-Jarrah managed to live on both sides of the bitterest divide running through this region. To friends and neighbors, he was an earnest supporter of the Palestinian cause, an affable, white-haired family man who worked as an administrator in a nearby school. To Israel, he appears to have been a valued spy, sending reports and taking clandestine photographs of Palestinian groups and Hezbollah since 1983. Now he sits in a Lebanese prison cell, accused by the authorities of betraying his country to an enemy state. Months after his arrest, his friends and former colleagues are still in shock over the extent of his deceptions. The carefully disguised trips abroad, the unexplained cash, a secret second wife. Lebanese investigators say he has confessed to a career of espionage spectacular in its scope and longevity, a real-life John le Carre novel. Many intelligence agents are said to operate in the civil chaos of Lebanon, but Mr. Jarrah's arrest has shed a real light onto a world of spying and subversion that usually persists in secret. Mr. Jarrah's first wife maintains that he was tortured and is innocent. Requests to interview him were denied. From his home in the Bekaa Valley village, Mr. Jarrah traveled often to Syria and to South Lebanon, where he photographed roads and convoys that might have been used to transport weapons to Hezbollah, the Shiite militant group, investigators say. He spoke with his handlers by satellite phone, receiving dead drops of money, cameras, and listening devices. Occasionally, on the pretext of a business trip, he traveled to Belgium and Italy, received an Israeli passport, and flew to Israel, where he was debriefed at length, investigators say. At the start of the 2006 war between Israel and Hezbollah, Israeli officials called Mr. Jarrah to reassure him that his village would be spared and that he should stay at home, investigators said. He was finally arrested last July by Hezbollah, which now has perhaps the most powerful intelligence apparatus in this country. It handed him to the Lebanese military along with his brother Youssef, who is accused of helping him spy, and he awaits trial by a military court. Several current and former military officials agreed to provide details about his case on condition of anonymity, saying they were not authorized to discuss it before the trial began. Their accounts tallied with details provided by Mr. Jarrah's relatives and former colleagues. It is not the family's first brush with notoriety. One of Mr. Jarrah's cousins, Ziad al-Jarrah, was allegedly among the 19 hijackers who carried out the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001, though the men were 20 years apart in age and do not appear to have known each other well. Mark Regev, a spokesman for Israel's Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, declined to discuss Mr. Jarrah's situation, saying, "It is not our practice to publicly talk about such allegations in this case or in any case." Villagers here seemed incredulous that a man they knew all their lives could have taken money to spy for a country that they regard with unmixed hatred and disgust. Many, however, maintained his innocence. But Raja Moshesh, the Palestinian doctor who was his partner for years in a school and health clinic here, did not. "I never suspected him before," said Dr. Moshesh. "But now, after linking all the incidents together, I feel he's 100% guilty." He used to talk about the Palestinian cause all the time, how he supported the cause. He supported the people, He liked everyone, the son of a dog. Mr. Jarrah would often borrow money to buy cigarettes, apparently posing as a man of limited means. Investigators say he received more than $300,000 for his work from Israel. Only recently did he begin to spend monies in ways that raised questions. About 6 years ago, neighbors said he built a 3-story villa with a terracotta roof that is by far the grandest house in this modest village of low concrete dwellings. Outside is a small roofed archway with a heavy iron gate, and on a recent day, a German shepherd stood guard. Dr. Mullish asked him where he got all the money, and Mr. Jarrah said he got help from a daughter living in Brazil. It is a natural excuse in Lebanon, where a large portion of the population receives remittances from relatives abroad. Mr. Jarrah also had a secret second wife, according to investigators and his former colleagues. Unlike his first wife, Marianne Shamuri, al-Jarrah, who lived in relative grandeur with their 5 children in Maraj, the second wife lived in a cheap apartment in the town of Masna, near the Syrian border. This apparently allowed Mr. Jarrah to travel near the border in an unremarkable guise of a local working class man. Ali al-Jarrah has said to have was recruited in 1983, a year after Israel began a major invasion of Lebanon by Israeli officers who had imprisoned him, according to investigators. He was offered regular payments in exchange for information about Palestinian militants and Syrian troop movements, they said. After Israel withdrew from Lebanon in 2000, thousands of Lebanese from the occupied zone in the south were tried and sentenced mostly to light prison terms for collaborating with Israel. Far from the border, a different class of collaborators rooted in their communities persisted. A few have been caught and sentenced. Mr. Jarrah's motivations remain a mystery. He said he tried to stop, but the Israelis would not let him, investigators said. It all came to an end last summer. He went on a trip to Syria in July, and when he returned, he said he had been briefly detained by the Syrian police, his first wife said. He seemed very uneasy, not his usual self, she said. He left his house that night saying he was going to Beirut and never returned, Ms. Jarrah had said later. Only 3 months later did she get a call from the Lebanese army saying it had custody of him. A few weeks ago, Ms. Jarrah said she was allowed to see him. He looked terrible, exhausted. Lebanese security forces released a photograph of Mr. Jarrah taken before his arrest. In it, he appears against a blue and white backdrop, dressed in a formal dark shirt, wearing an enigmatic smile. And if you think the story ends there, it does not. Very few know about Assem al-Jarrah, the uncle of Ziad Jarrah. And very little information is there on the internet. Back in November 4th of 2019, I wrote an article headlined Assem Jarrah, Out from the Ashes of Flight 93, in which I talk in brief spurts about Assem al-Jarrah. Assem Omar Jarrah was born in 1962 by the Bekaa Valley, Lebanon. His family began noticing the fluctuation of his visits back home and also noticed his very lavish lifestyle. His expensive and egregious nature was even noticed by intelligence contacts he did business with. Assem was known for his manipulating nature and in time began a connection to the members of the Stasi, the East German security services in which he lived in, the German Federal Intelligence Services, or the BND, as well as being coveted by the Abu Nidal Organization, the ANO, whom began taking a liking to the impressionable businessman. One of his German handlers tells Der Spiegel, a German publication, that Jarrah played us all for fools. He had tons of cash, women, simply everything. Assem, however, denies that he ever spied for anyone. But by the mid-1990s, it was suspected he was also dealing with the Central Intelligence Agency. Asla Andishaltabas, a reporter from the Wall Street Journal, even describes Assem Jarrah, as working very closely with the ANO, even having a separate file within the German intelligence agency, the BFE. The report from Asla Al-Indabas, quote, according to Stasi files described by Der Spiegel last November, a note on the back of Assem Jarrah's file specified he had contact with people in Operation Trader, Stasi code for the Abu Nidal group, which staged several operations in Germany and recruited agents among Arab students. The al-Jarrah, who allegedly worked for Libya as a double agent, was among the students Nidal's men approached. His big contracts, along with foreign governments and the intelligence community, began to grow, much like his personal businesses in Germany. Meanwhile, Abu Nidal would continue to do business with notable countries with whom also would be on the receiving end of his terrorist campaigns, unless they paid handsomely well. The Israeli Mossad long suspected of being behind his group Fatah, which undermined the Palestinian Liberation Organization founded in 1964 by the Arab League, headed by Yasser Arafat. One of the core tenets of the PLO's ideology is the belief that Jewish Zionism had unjustly expelled the Palestinians from Palestine and established a Jewish state in place under the pretext of having historic and Jewish ties with Palestine. Arafat would later implicate Abu Nidal as working for the Israeli Mossad. Jarrah would continue his close relationship with even Libyan President Muammar Gaddafi, and with German intelligence. Jarrah had later explained, I do not deny that I have received money from Libya because in Greifswald, I found the German Arab Friendship Society, which is supported by the Libyan government. Because of these actions, he had, or of course, also have to speak with security. Thus was the case in the GDR. Jarrah also maintains he had nothing to do with terrorism-related activities. However, members of his family thought otherwise. While one stated to Der Spiegel, Assem sells information for money, whether they vote or not. After the September 11th attacks, media reporters would quickly descend on the shocked Jarrah family home in Beirut. Salim al-Jarrah, father of Ziad Jarrah, would continually deny vehemently that what was reported about Ziad Jarrah, his son, as being an Islamic extremist, was shamelessly wrong. Incorrect, they said. He denied that Ziad Jarrah would ever hijack a plane and crashing it and killing people. However, only one member of the Jarrah family would not only implicate Ziad as being involved in the 9/11 attacks, but that he was indeed an Islamic fundamentalist. Assem Jarrah would later tell German authorities at the BFE on September 17th, 6 days after the attacks, that Ziad went to Pakistan or Afghanistan in 1999, and when he came back, he yearned to die as a martyr. However, according to most everyone in the Jarrah family, his friends, and even his girlfriend, Azil Senguin, nothing was ever related to them by Ziad regarding his willingness to die as a martyr. In fact, only the intelligence committee would know after the fact that Jarrah even went to Afghanistan in 1999. U.S. investigators would later claim that Ziad Jarrah was not very close to his second cousin, Assem, but Gunther Lach, an investigative journalist at Der Spiegel, countered otherwise. He was the one who picked him up at the airport when he first came to Germany. The uncle paid for his apartment. He really took care of him. The story is also quite similar to Ziad Jarrah's uncle, Ali al-Jarrah, who would later be arrested in 2011 in Lebanon for being an Israeli spy for 25 years. It seemed even after all this time, nothing would become of Assem Jarrah, as he continued to live under a seemingly quiet lifestyle after all these years of being involved with numerous intelligence entities. That is, until his business card was found amongst that steaming wreckage of United Airlines Flight 93. On the back of the card were some handwritten notes. The notes included an address in Germany linked with Ramzi Ben Ashib, a member of the hijacker cell in Hamburg, Germany. The address was located in Wilhelmsburg at a red brick pre-war housing project where Mohammed Atta and Marwan al-Shehhi also lived. The Jarrah family, very much like a puzzle with missing pieces, has many more questions than answers as to why it seems that certain members of the Jarrah family are inexplicably linked to some of history's most infamous terrorist activities. Meanwhile, the damaging links are a constant reminder that even though there is no definitive link of the Jarrah family to the 9/11 attacks, the famous quote, a little too close to home, can be put to context in this regard, especially when in the summer of 1988, the Foreign Office sent a terrorism warning to the German BKA. Content: the terrorist Abu Nidal plan on August 20th, an attack on Lufthansa Flight 651, Athens-Frankfurt, code name of the operation, Jarrah. The Jarrah family continued to be synonymous with the 9/11 attacks, along with being involved with the Abu Nidal Organization and with Israel, Libya, Germany. Coincidence? Or something far more nefarious? It is also important to note that after the 9/11 attacks, Ziad Jarrah's girlfriend, Aziel Sanguine, would report to the German BFV, in which she would undergo an interview. Most of the interview is redacted. However, it is important to note that Aziel Sanguine would then enter the Witness Protection Program. The question is, why would she be whisked away forever, living under another assumed name, when her life was no longer in danger? That she posed no threat, but that she gave information regarding Ziad Jarrah. It seems that with Ziad Jarrah and certain family members, there are more questions than answers.